What's up, guys? It's Tommy T back at you with the Thrill Sports Podcast, coming in once again. Today we're going to talk about mainly NBA and then a little bit of XFL. Anyways, 1, 2, 3, let's get into it. Okay, so first off, we got Milwaukee. Milwaukee recently lost to the Miami Heat, where they lost once again in a 2-0 series so far this season. You know, there's been a lot of questioning and the asking of whether the Bucks can bring enough to the playoffs, and whether they'll perform or not to what people expect. I've said before, I don't believe anybody can take down the Bucks, but with this recent loss and terrible performance by the Bucks, shows that there is some weakness that even though they tried so hard that game to try to turn it around, the Heat kept answering back. The only problem in that game that I saw, and statistically, was the scoring. The scoring didn't add up to what it should have been. Their defense was still fine. Where their defense that week compared to other defenses in the league, we're still ranked high, ranking in 7th, 6th, generally around there. Where, and so mainly with the scoring, Giannis is obviously the big factor of how they lost that game. He only got 13 points, where, he only made 6 of 18 field goal attempts, just not cutting it for the Milwaukee Bucks. Where, and so, that, which brings on the biggest question: will Giannis go above in the playoffs? Will Giannis be the dominant player we've seen and not slump like this previous game that we've witnessed? Now, his goal for the season is to win the NBA final, and there's nothing else for that. He doesn't want MVP. He doesn't want Defensive Player of the Year. He just wants to win the final, win that ring, and whatever, right? And so, I think Giannis is going to have an even more different mentality. Giannis is definitely, he's definitely perseverant of the people who come and see and watch, because he's always trying to bring his A game. He's trying to be the best he can on the court all the time. He knows that he's still young and he's got a lot of energy, and he's gifted with such great abilities of his length, height, and control, and just likes to show it off and prove how he's one of the most dominant in the game. And he doesn't leave anybody he tries not to leave anybody disappointment from leaving the arena, the court, whatever. He wants everybody to be satisfied, that including himself. So, typically the average game in the NBA consists around 112 points. Giannis scores around 26% of this, averaging at 29 points, making him the driving force of this Milwaukee Bucks team. But not just that, his intensity and his defense, he insists on providing, making him even more dominant and successful for his team. As well as just his leadership and his attitude and his ability of just moving forward and just gaining more energy and just knowing what to say, with criticism of this, the things, James Harden has said from him, where Harden saying, Giannis isn't as skilled, Giannis is just gifted, and that's true. And that skilled part is true too. I think, James Harden is definitely way more skilled than Giannis, but Giannis is more gifted. And, that's a fact. And, doesn't mean Giannis should be ashamed of it, but he should be grateful that he has the ability that some people don't quite have, like Harden doesn't. But, the Heat shunning him and limiting him to only 13 points is a problem. I personally believe this is a fluke game, and that the Bucks and Giannis will get like the workload in and stuff, or Giannis specifically, and the coaching with that will help Giannis, and Giannis will be himself. I think Giannis will perform good in the playoffs. I could see Giannis probably starting off maybe a bit slow than he usually does, not really getting the numbers quite well. But once he really gets a feel for it, once the pressure stops rising, he'll do just fine. And especially them more likely having home court advantage through the playoffs will help Giannis settle more. But what I'm really worried about is how his team will compete. How will they be better compared to last year? With the updated roster and, just the overall progress of Middleton, being an underdog number 2 in the league. Can he be the rising player we've seen this season in the playoffs? Last year, he kind of slumped a bit. It wasn't the best. Can he progress? Can he do better from that with this experience of playoffs? And, can he be more motivated and patient with knowing what is coming further ahead? Moving on from Milwaukee, looking at the other teams who could possibly upset Milwaukee in playoffs is, first of all, who they just lost to, the Heat. The Heat knows how to move the ball efficiently. They put the ball in the best spot to score. They're simply just trying to play the best basketball they can. The way they move the ball, the way they pass, the way they rely on the open man in order to get the best look is the way the game should be played. Even though you see players like Giannis and LeBron drive to the hoop, get physical, and and they score. But that doesn't mean it was a good play. If anything, it probably wasn't the best play they could have done. But in all, it was they benefited, progressed, and it was probably a good matchup too. He beat that matchup. It was a good matchup, and with that, that's fine. But with playmaking, looking for the open man, you have a better shot, you have a better opportunity, you have a better chance of scoring, where Miami is so good at, with no matter what range they're in, whether they're right at the basket when they're open or out on a three-point line, they seem just to target and hit each other to make those big time plays. Anyways, along with that, we've seen their new players, Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder from Memphis. I was a big fan of Iguodala. He's Andre Iguodala. He's clearly a veteran. He's played for the Warriors, MVP in the finals. Always brings his A game to defense and offense. And I feel like Iguodala will play a big time role, not just in his leadership, but he really does still have enough to really shake up other teams and just make this Heat team better with his physical ability and skills along with him. But with Jay Crowder, I really like Jay Crowder. I thought Crowder was doing really good on Memphis, and unfortunately for Memphis traded Jay Crowder and gave him to the Heat, where his last game he played, he got 18 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists in a matter of 29 minutes. He played very good. He, was open. He was ready. He seems like he fits right into that offense, and it's great seeing him. Hopefully they can use him towards more of the physical side, where they really only got Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler to do all that dirty work, where like kind of the smaller guys like Hero, Duncan Robinson, those guys are kind of like behind three-point line, kind of in the mid-range, where they're definitely not as big and physical as Bam and Butler are. Where Crowder is, he's about like 6'6", weighing like 240, and hopefully they can find ways to make him get more physical, and so that they could shake up the defenses even more. Hopefully finding better ways of making better opportunities to score even more points. But moving on, another team that has really shocked us coming back from the break is Celtics. Celtics with Jason Tatum. Tatum's taking the lead of the Celtics. He's really showing that he's like, hey, I'm the guy. I'm Tatum. And he's averaging 34 points, since coming back from the All-Star break, which is insane. I mean, averaging 34. I mean, he's played about like 5 games. Coming back now. At this time, he's injured, pulling something. He'll be fine. It's not that bad of an injury, but still these numbers are pretty insane. And with that, the efficiency of his teammates, like Jaylen Brown averaging 22 since the All-Star break, goes for, and as well goes for the whole entire Celtics roster, where they have been extremely dominant offensively and defensively. Their defense has shot up as well, being 4th defense so far. Out of all these teams, they have got to have one of the best rosters, not just in the East, but in the league itself. I didn't think this was going to be the Celtics' year, but with what they've done so far, they've definitely showed that it definitely could be. I felt like they needed one more year to progress, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did good in the playoffs, but I'm not too sure about them really going all the way quite just yet. But they definitely have the team to do so. It's just the question if they can still stay this efficient with this upper level, with where they've reached. Can they still maintain that level with Tatum taking the main role and these other guys helping him and just helping the team out and just making the plays and just being the better team on the court. Now, finally with what next, the 76ers, with the injuries they've had, with Embiid and Ben Simmons, their 2 best players, it's hard to tell how this team will be able to bounce back if they could get to their original state, and not just that, it was also questionable if if they could do better at their original state from where they were. They weren't quite too impressive. They were still good, but out of the better teams, they were definitely the most questionable in the East. With Embiid and Simmons also being inside the paint players, I find it hard ever going past Milwaukee. I think if you'd put the Celtics, Heat, teams like those against the Bucks, I feel like they'd have a better shot. than really the 76ers do, because the 76ers are so drive focused, with Simmons not really too confident on his threes and Embiid not really a 3-point man, more of, he's a center. And, the game is just purely not built for them quite not much anymore, just with how, especially Milwaukee's number one defense. Milwaukee really has trouble when, teams like the Heat and like the Celtics with their insane shooting range from 3-point can really shake up the defense, and just with wider perimeter of play than the Sixers got with Embiid and Simmons. Finally, the Raptors, I don't really see. I don't think Raptors have as good as a chance as these teams. Maybe a bit better than the Sixers, but there's really no change. The Raptors are kind of the same. Obviously they're like second right now in the conference of the East, but they don't have that extra level, the extra breach. No player has really popped up. They've all been good, some of them above average, but they haven't really been that dominant level of like a star, just like really somebody who could like take the wheels of this joyride, where like we've seen with the Celtics, Tatum booming, where like I thought before the Raptors and Celtics were very similar of how they played and just like the efficiency of the teams, but with Tatum even booming with that efficiency, they definitely look more playoff bound than really the Raptors do, where like last year Kawhi helped them win, go and progress from that, where like even then with the 76ers, it was like a buzzer beater of like a game 7, like moving on. Like then from if that didn't happen, they probably wouldn't have even made the finals. Also questioning about Kawhi and the Clippers, is Kawhi overrated in that sense? I don't know. He performed good. He performed great. He was clearly the successor all the way through the playoffs, but I just don't think the Raptors got enough, especially without Kawhi. But all NBA side, moving on, we got the XFL. Not much has really happened this week, except the brief upset or what I'm going to talk about real quick with the Defenders. The Defenders were not on their A game. The Defenders clearly struggled on the road, and they're seemingly deteriorating from being a good team as mediocre, as they just gave the Vipers their first win of the Vipers being 0-3. The Vipers are now 1-3. The problem with the Defenders is really their offense right now. They got to work some things out with their quarterback and maybe just use his speed as some of his advantage. I mean, the guy's huge. He doesn't look like he should be a quarterback. He looks like he should be like on the line somewhere, like defensive, offensive. Just put him on there. But really, I mean, he does have a great arm, a little inaccurate, but just with that, just stay with it, figure some things out. He's surprisingly fast too, and just the way he's built, he could really turn himself into a Cam Newton, which I think they should do. After all, it's XFL football. This isn't really NFL. If he gets injured, so what? But it's not the NFL. It's the XFL. This is like a new thing. It doesn't really matter as much as like it does in the NFL. With that being said, the Vipers, from how they played, they seemed just to not care. They got crafty with their plays and did some things that they probably couldn't get away with in the NFL, but simply just because it was the XFL, they did. And they ended up scoring. Even on things errors they made, I think their quarterback fumbled one time, and the running back literally took it, like 15, 20 yards, like 5 yards away from the end zone, which, ended up helped them end up scoring. And just, just doing the risky plays, and even the errors made them ultimately win with a complete shutout where defenders didn't even score any points. And yeah, I mean, that's it today, guys. That's all I got. Next week, we'll be talking more about this stuff. And yeah, see you guys in the next video.